Look, you can keep hoping for my downfall all you want. I'm just gonna sit here eating soup. Love you.
Hi guys, how are you doing today? I hope you are all doing very well. Now, before we get into today's video topic, I just want to say something that I think is very important. So in my last video, I talked about the I'm Alex situation. I also talked about a certain portion of the response that he had made where he talked about cataclysm and whatever. But one of the things that I did say in the beginning of that video is I made the implication that Alex and Alice might have been mutually abusive. I now know that that is a completely outdated term. There is no such thing as mutual abuse. There is always a primary aggressor and someone who is reactive to the abuse. I am very sorry that I said that. Clearly, I was not as educated as I should have been on DV topics. I want to thank those of you that were very kind and corrected me and educated me. I'm really grateful to have so many people in my audience that are willing to correct me and tell me when I'm wrong in a very respectful way. So thank you all so much for that. Again, I am very, very sorry. As today's topic, we are also talking about another situation of unfortunately. So I just wanted to say that, make that correction. I know I said it in a pinned comment, but obviously pinned comments don't have nearly as much of an impact as videos do. So once again, I'm very sorry for that. I will educate myself in the future before discussing DV topics on this channel. So today, oh my gosh, we are talking about yet another problematic TikToker known as Lexity. Let me tell you guys, I had heard this name being thrown around here and there, right? And when I was asking for new video topics, someone had suggested Lexity. When I looked into this, I was not prepared. I was not prepared. This rabbit hole is insane. There's so much to it. I yeah, honestly, I don't even have words. I don't even have words. This is a lot. This is a lot. Okay, firstly, so some quick disclaimers. So I need to give a big trigger warning today. We are going to be briefly discussing subjects such as we're also going to, at some points, be seeing videos of our protagonist being extremely angry and volatile. It can be very intense to witness, however, it is necessary to the timeline and the story, so I will include trigger warnings on the screen before I show those videos, but I just want to give a disclaimer because I don't often see people on camera get reactionary like this, and even for me, at times, it was a little overwhelming to watch. So once again, I will include trigger warnings before I show those clips. Additionally, Anastasia Lexity is transgender. She also identifies as omnigender. When I was looking into some videos of hers, she does use both male and female pronouns. However, she has said that she only prefers male pronouns at certain times, but always prefers female pronouns. For that reason, we will be using female pronouns when referring to Lexity. Now, there are some parts of this story that involve allegations made against Anastasia. When doing research for this video, the allegations alone are a lot to unpack, including Anastasia's response to these allegations. For that reason, I have decided that this is going to be my first ever two-part series on this channel. Trying to fit both the allegations against Anastasia as well as the story of Anastasia as a whole is a lot. And I think it is just something that I am not prepared to do at this point in time as a newer YouTuber. And I really want to be thorough here. I just think to do both the allegations and the story all in just one go in one big video is just going to be a bit too overwhelming for me. I'm worried that if I try to do that and overwhelm myself, I am going to inevitably get things wrong. I don't want to feed you guys the wrong information. So just to be clear, part one of this video is going to be focusing on Anastasia herself, both who she is as a person as well as her internet persona. We are going to be doing a whole analysis as she is a very complex person. In part 2 of this video, we are going to be doing a deep dive into the allegations against Anastasia as well as her reaction to them. And we're going to be looking deeper into her opinions on topics such as abuse as well as victims of abuse. So please be prepared and stay tuned for part 2 of this video. Now, with all that said, let's get started. Anastasia Alexandra Athena Lennon, also known as Lexity, Lex, Lexicat, and Anyathena, is a female internet personality as well as a Twitch streamer. I will be using Anastasia and Lexity interchangeably in this video so that it's not too confusing as she goes by many names and aliases. Anastasia's biggest platforms are Instagram and TikTok, with her Instagram sitting at over 288,000 followers and her TikTok sitting at over 150,000 followers. She also has a separate Instagram to post rage content, which we will get into more in a little bit. Though Instagram and TikTok are her main platforms, she is also on Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and as of recently, Twitch. Her earliest post dates back to May 24th, 2021 on her Instagram, which is a short video of her playing piano. Now, while Instagram may be her largest platform, I will be focusing on her TikTok mostly for this video, as a lot of her Instagram posts are just older posts from her TikTok and don't accurately lay out the timeline. Anastasia is quite talented, as a lot of her early TikTok content centers around her singing, as well as her playing instruments such as the piano, flute, and guitar, and even dabbling in poetry.
Silence, she sings to me, a cacophony of cavernous vacuity, and with my hands black and dead, I pick up what remains, and I hold those pieces once again, but still, silence stays the same.
She is also very into beatboxing, as a lot of her early TikTok content especially focuses on her beatboxing skills. Now, I don't know anything about the standards of beatboxing, however, I will say as an amateur, some of this shit is pretty intense.
Oh my god, slay. Oh my god, slay. Oh my god, slay. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, slay. Slay.
Anastasia began posting more regularly in 2023, and most of her early TikToks would only get a few hundred views. People often say Anastasia got popular from her fun fact videos. However, the thing that actually made her gain more attention initially was her poetry videos. Gradually, her views would increase into the thousands. Then in late 2023 and early 2024, this is when Anastasia transitions her content into fun fact videos. And although her poetry gained her attention initially, this was Anastasia's breakthrough into the internet personality that we know today. Lexity would make these fun fact videos where she would break down somewhat difficult to understand concepts and relate them in a way that made them easier to understand.
Hey, sweetie pea, so something's poisonous if you putting it in your mouth will harm you, and it's venomous if it putting you in its mouth will harm you. Not exactly, but most animals do use their teeth or mandibles to get the venom into your bloodstream. All venomous really means is that it needs to get some sort of toxin into your bloodstream to actually do harm to you. Like, you could drink cobra venom and you'd be fine. I mean, don't actually do that. If you have a cut in your mouth or an ulcer in your stomach, it will do harm to you, but it needs to get into your bloodstream to actually harm you, right? That's the difference between venom and poison. Tarantulas are covered in something called urticating hairs, which are these little hairs that have toxins on them. And when tarantulas are threatened, they'll like shake off a bunch of the hairs, they'll float into the wind, you know, get in your eyes and skin and mucous membranes and just cause a lot of irritation. And that's considered venomous because it needs to get into your, you know, like bloodstream to have an effect, right? But the thing about that is if toxic hairs are considered venomous, then plants should be venomous a lot of the time. Like stinging nettles in the gimpy plant should be considered venomous because the way that they deliver toxins to the things that they're delivering toxins to is through venomous hairs, or poisonous hairs, I suppose. I don't know. Another question I've always had is, if you are heating your house, does turning off lights or turning off electronics actually do anything? Because waste always goes to heat eventually, right? Like waste power always eventually ends up as heat, you know? I don't know. So if you have like an electric space heater plugged in next to your PC, does turning your PC off actually save power when all of the energy that was going into the PC eventually ended up as heat? Or does it just make the space heater run more and therefore the ultimate energy costs are the same? Presuming you didn't like change the temperature of the room, right? Like, does that make sense?
And something you'll notice, it's not just her ability to simplify these concepts in an understandable way, but it's her delivery of them as well. Because Anastasia is a very well-spoken person. She speaks eloquently, she speaks fast, and she relays her words in a very confident tone. She is very self-assured, and alongside her fun fact videos, she also began making this sort of self-help motivational content. These videos always begin with her trademark phrase, "Hey, sweet pea."
Hey, sweet pea. Hey, sweet pea. Hey, sweet pea.
It's then followed with some kind of motivational speak, whether it's just life advice, relationship advice, how to deal with mental health issues, navigating trauma, insecurity, self-help, self-betterment, you name it.
Hey, sweet pea, gratitude and trauma are separate things, and I don't care if the only trauma you've experienced in your entire life is that you stubbed your toe one time on a table and now you have difficulty trusting tables. That's still valid trauma, and you're still allowed to take up space and talk about your trauma. As long as you're not delegitimizing someone else's pain, all trauma is valid, no matter how minor it might seem to you, and no matter how severe the trauma that is being shared in the space you are in is, okay? People do not have the right to compare their trauma to yours to delegitimize it, regardless of how severe their trauma is and how minor your trauma is. Your pain is valid, and unless you are removing someone else's space, you deserve to take up your own.
And it always concludes with an, "I love you."
I love you. I love you. I love you.
And this sort of content seems to be her main focus even now. Additionally, a smaller but also important aspect of her online persona is her kinks, as she identifies as a dommy mommy and is very open about her interest in BDSM culture.
Hey, sweet pea, so I'm a mommy dom, and that's not just a sex thing. It's a thing that I am in romantic relationships outside of the bedroom. I want to cook for you. I want to run you a bath. I want to take care of you, and I want to hold you and tell you that you're safe and listen to your emotions and do the things that I wish my mother had done for me when I was a child. And yes, it does come from trauma, and that's okay, right? Everything comes from trauma. Trauma shapes us, and just because you can say, oh, you have mommy issues, yes, I do, and I handle them very well, I give consenting adults a comforting, welcoming space where they can be emotionally vulnerable and feel taken care of, so I can experience vicariously the childhood I never got. What's bad about that?
She has 18 plus NSFW accounts and also has videos where she showcases some of her homemade whips, some of which she claims are not safe for human use.
Hey, sweet pea, check out this whip I made.
Now, I wouldn't normally bring up a person I'm covering's sexual interest unless it was somehow relevant to the story, but in this case, unfortunately, it is relevant to the story, as she attributes a lot of her stubbornness towards her followers to her dommy mommy status, and even at one point kind of visualizes her rage. This is something we'll dive more into later on in part 2 of this video. When you look at some of these comments prior to her controversies, and you read these forums of people labeling themselves ex-sweet peas who no longer support her, they always bring up why they were drawn to her. Number 1, they find her very attractive. She has these very bright, striking green eyes alongside a very nice smile and paired with an alternative aesthetic. Number 2, they find her charismatic. On the surface, she seems very knowledgeable, and that alongside her confident delivery of whatever she's saying makes her very alluring. Number 3, and probably the main point I see people making, they just find Anastasia very comforting. It's nice to see little TikToks of an attractive and confident person calling you sweet pea, telling you you're beautiful and worthy and valid, how the world may not understand you, but I do. And you are so important and I need you and everything will be okay. And I love you. These videos are getting hundreds of thousands to millions of views consistently, and in 2024 she would gain a pretty big online presence within the self-help and mental health space. So here we have a picture of a woman embracing self-expression through poetry and music and fashion, posting these passions online for the world to see, who's doing these little fun fact videos and creating self-help content that is resonating with thousands of people on a regular basis, and having overall a seemingly positive impact online. So where exactly did it all go wrong? The start of Anastasia's downfall would lie in the very self-help and motivational content she garnered so much praise and attention for. Because before that, we only really knew these isolated aspects of her. Her passion for music and poetry, her fun fact videos. But once she began to transition into this style of content, she would slowly begin to reveal more and more about herself as a person, not just her passions, but who Lexity really is. And within a few months, the mask would slip completely, and this is when we see the real darkness that lies within Lexity. I suppose we should start with Lexity's mental health. Anastasia has stated that she has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or BPD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD, and attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD. BPD is often confused with bipolar disorder, as both BPD and bipolar disorder sound similar, and both of them deal with mood swings. However, they are very different. Bipolar disorder is a chemical imbalance within the brain. Bipolar mood swings can be triggered but can also be unprovoked, and can last days to weeks to even months for some. Bipolar disorder also deals with mania, a mental state that people with bipolar disorder experience that deals with feelings such as euphoria, arousal, as well as inflated self-ego or self-esteem. Mania is specific to bipolar disorder, and there's this discourse I see online, especially on TikTok, that likes to say that people with BPD can also experience mania. Some people with BPD experience manic-like symptoms at times, such as euphoria and elevated energy levels. However, mania is not included in the BPD symptomology. Now, it is possible to have both BPD and bipolar disorder, so in that case, it is possible for a person with BPD to experience mania, but that is due to the bipolar and BPD overlap. And FYI, if you do your own research on this, you will come across sources claiming that people with BPD can experience mania. Just know that not all sources are reliable, and ultimately most professionals, as well as the DSM-5 or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, do not recognize mania as a BPD symptom. That may change in the future, but as of right now, that is where it stands. Now, BPD mood swings, on the other hand, are far more rapid than with bipolar disorder. A person with BPD can go from 0 to 100 almost instantaneously if they are triggered. And it's not just the rapid change of emotions, but the intensity of them as well, as rage and anger are common symptoms of BPD episodes. Not all people with BPD experience rage and anger during their episodes. For some people, they just tend to get a little bit more emotional. Everyone with BPD experiences it very differently. But for Anastasia specifically, she struggles with extreme rage during her BPD episodes. And that's not just me saying that, that is something that she recognizes herself and is very open about within her content.
Hey Sweet Pea, I have borderline personality disorder, and it's truly remarkable to me how little sympathy the symptoms of borderline personality disorder get. Like, rage is one of my symptoms, and I understand that it is entirely my fault when I express my anger in an unacceptable way. And I need to work harder to control my triggers, but part of that is putting myself in an environment where people are willing to work with me. I don't necessarily blame those people, but I do understand when people are bad for me, and they are bad for me sometimes. I'm not imagining my mental disorder, and I'm not imagining my triggers, and if you're not willing to work with my triggers, you can't be in my life. And that is a part of having sympathy for people who have mental disorders, specifically PTSD and BPD. That's what it means. And if you can't or aren't willing to deal with rage and someone's triggers, then don't be around someone who has BPD. Please, like, that's exactly what it means. And it is entirely our fault when we express our rage in an unhealthy way, but that's what the disorder means. I don't know what you expect from someone who says that they have BPD other than occasional extreme emotional episodes. That's what it means. I'm sorry if I hurt you. I'm sorry if I scared you. I have BPD. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. I love you.
And this rage is very intense. At times, it can also be very frightening. She has had these episodes both on camera and in live streams. And when I say her BPD episodes can be frightening, I am not trying to stigmatize BPD episodes, but Anastasia herself has actually described her anger and rage as scary many times. So these are actually her own words herself.
Nor the last time that people will accuse trans women of sexual assault because they think that they're just men. No! This is always the way transphobia works. And you know what I'm this mad? Is because it's the 1,000th time people have implied I or my identity is a predator. I am not, and trans people aren't sex predators. I went to the store after they said that this dog was gonna be rehomed and got my hopes up, picked out a name to get for the dog, supplies, you know? Came back, dog was nowhere to be seen, they wouldn't let me have the dog back, you know? I spent all night fighting with my partner because they wouldn't let me be mad at the landlord even. They wouldn't even let me be mad about not being allowed to have my dog, right? So, like, I spent all night fucking working with that, and eventually I stopped fighting with that and went to sleep, and I woke up and I was really mad about not having my goddamn dog! You know? And that's why I got kicked out. Because I screamed like this about wanting my dog back! You know what? And I'm not sorry! I want my goddamn dog!
Although Lexity claims that she is doing self-work and is able to identify her triggers, it seems that she lacks all ability to control and regulate her emotions. And she has said herself that this rage causes her to lose many of her close relationships, including friends, family, and romantic partners.
Hey Sweet Pea, so recently I've been posting a lot of very angry videos on here, and I'm sorry for that. Not really sorry, but I am thankful that you were here for me, that you heard me for once, because the reality was, is nobody around me, nobody like in my personal life that I knew personally listens to me, or at least was listening to me in the environment I was in. Although the reality is I find myself in situations where nobody is listening to me all the time. It feels like it's pretty much my entire life. Although I think I push people away when they do care about me. It's not exactly a good habit. You know, I've had some very good friends. I've had some very good friends. David and Connor, I have considered to be fantastic friends of mine. Adriana. Yeah. But I push them away. Claire, Birdie, I push them away. Well, Claire got scared, but I don't blame her for that. I'm scary sometimes. The other Claire I did push away, and I don't really know why I push people away when they're genuinely kind and concerned about me, and I only really let people in if they're like a little bit toxic. I think part of me just wants to feel like I'm in control of like the relationship, and if I'm in a relationship with someone who's less emotionally intelligent than I am, I feel like I'm in control, even if I'm getting abused. Sometime. I don't know, maybe it's just because that's what I'm used to, because my parents are who my parents are. But yeah, that's something I really should work on. I hope you're feeling lovely today. I'm gonna try and be less angry on here now. I guess I'm just gonna be sad now. I mean, venting has given me a lot of clarity, and I thank you for hearing me. But I don't know if dwelling on the anger is gonna get me any further than it has, you know. I love you.
She has also been kicked out of living spaces due to her emotional outbursts, and that is the reason why she is currently living in a van, which we will get into more in a little bit. And the problem with her intense rage and episodes, aside from the fact that they are very disruptive and can be frightening, is that it causes her close relationships to implode. And like other internet personalities we have covered on this channel, Lexity's main goal in life is to find a life partner. Not a romantic partner, not a sexual partner, but a lifelong partner that she can share all of herself with, who will be there no matter what through anything and everything.
Life partner, not a romantic partner, not a fuck buddy. And if we're gonna be friends, I want you to be clear about that. And if we're gonna be nothing, please be clear about that. Like, if you want to be in a relationship with me, You need to want a life partner, someone who you are willing to share every single aspect of.
And it's not that she can't find people who are interested in her, but it's that when she does, her anger and emotional outbursts inevitably push them away. FYI, fear of abandonment is a common symptom of BPD and can also be an extremely big trigger for people with BPD. And for Anastasia, this is a very big trigger for her. In one TikTok, she goes very in depth about her emotional outbursts and her triggers when discussing a previous partner. That partner being one of the individuals who came forward with allegations against her, which we will talk about later on in part 2. And I think this TikTok represents Anastasia's BPD and rage within a nutshell.
So my main experience in the dating world is that people will assume I'm their ex and then push me away constantly because of it. And I'm nothing like that person, but when they push me away enough, I eventually get upset, which I told them would happen because I have CPTSD and BPD. And one of my main triggers is people pushing me away because I have abandonment issues. God damn. And I tell them that. And that's not an excuse for me overreacting. It's still my responsibility to be clear with my boundaries and leave before I get to the point of overreacting, right? And I don't ever do that. I'm just too compassionate and I stay to the point where I blow up, even though I know it's going to happen and I warn them that it's going to happen. And when I do blow up, they blame me entirely and forget that I'm overreacting. Not reacting. I'm reacting to something, okay? I might have an unreasonable reaction that isn't okay to do, but it is a reaction to something that you did. You stepped all over my boundaries. I told you that if you kept pushing me away, I was going to react this way. I know what my triggers are, and you entirely ignored that because you assumed I was your abuse ex. And maybe the problem with your ex wasn't that you got overcommitted to someone. It's that you got overcommitted to a person who was going to treat you like get committed to someone or don't be with me. I want a life partner, not a romantic partner, not a fuck buddy. And if we're going to be friends, I want you to be clear about that. And if we're going to be nothing, please be clear about that. Like, if you want to be in a relationship with me, you need to want a life partner, someone who you are willing to share every single aspect of.
This is the shit that really sends me. Because your triggers and your emotions aren't anyone else's responsibility but your own, no matter how sick or mentally ill you are. It's not enough to say, these are what my triggers are, you knew what my boundaries are, and now I'm having this overreaction because you didn't respect my boundaries. First of all, people not pushing you away, that's not a boundary. People require the space to deal with their emotions just like you do. You cannot say that someone needing the space to deal with their emotions as a result of something that you very likely did is crossing a boundary. You cannot trap people into dealing with you when you are emotionally unstable and then call it crossing a boundary. Secondly, and oh my God, I am so sick of saying this. It is not enough to identify your triggers. You also have to be able to control and manage them. So often I see this discourse online, and this is my issue with the online BPD community as well as these BPD influencers, because the self-work doesn't just stop at identifying your triggers. Don't get me wrong, that is absolutely a huge step, is identifying your triggers, and that is a very remarkable step that you, Anastasia, have been able to do, but that is and never will be where the self-work ends. You can't just verbally say, these are what my triggers are, now I'm having this BPD reaction because you triggered me. And then they'll just act like they did their due diligence, and because they warned you that they're going to have that reaction, when they do have that reaction, then they then say that it's your fault. And this is why so many people see people with BPD as a whole as toxic and abusive. You will never be in a situation in life where external things in people won't trigger you. That just isn't possible. Of course, you can do things to try and limit your triggers being pushed by not surrounding yourself with people who often push those triggers. But even in a perfect, healthy relationship, there will inevitably be conflict at some point. And how one person deals with their emotions may unintentionally trigger your emotions, and you have to learn how to deal with that. That is what you need to be doing, Anastasia. This is going to keep happening to you because of your refusal to actually learn how to manage your emotions, and instead blame people for your episodes and your reactions because they could not cater to your needs every second of the day because they are their own person with their own emotional needs. Obviously, there are a lot of people with BPD who are like Lexity, I'm not saying there aren't. But there are so many people struggling with BPD who work hard every single day to identify their triggers and learn to manage their emotions in order to limit the amount of episodes and outbursts they have. People who have meaningful and long-lasting healthy relationships, which, believe it or not, you can have even if you have BPD, despite what every little BPD TikTok queen tries to say, because they put in that self-work. You, Anastasia, are everything that's wrong with the online BPD community and BPD TikTok. You are furthering the stigma of BPD with shit like this. And it's really unfair that these are the people who gain attention and garner these large platforms. Now, moving on, aside from her rage and BPD episodes, Anastasia also has a drinking problem. And you definitely won't believe this because it's totally not at all in character for her, but she actually blames other people for her drinking problem as well.
To be like, I made a mistake, this is how I'm gonna grow and move on. And they're just, you made a mistake, you made a mistake, you made a mistake. How about they focus on what they did at all? Because Marcy did consent. And you know what? Marcella refused to tell me that she wouldn't leave me, and she encouraged me to drink alcohol after saying I was an alcoholic who wanted to quit. She did do that, and she hasn't apologized for that.
I don't think this woman could spell the word accountability. The concept is just so foreign to her. Like with many people who struggle with alcoholism, alcohol triggers Anastasia's BPD and rage. So not only does she have BPD whose baseline is incredibly unstable and which she refuses to manage, but she also self-medicates with alcohol, which is not only addictive, but a notorious antidepressant. Look, I don't want to be unfair here. I want to still try to remain nuanced, even though it's somewhat difficult for me as a lot of this hits close to home. It's very possible that Anastasia just never had the resources to treat her mental health in her episodes and therefore self-medicates with alcohol as a result. But at the same time, it's difficult because, let's be real, it's not like Anastasia doesn't understand that she has a problem. She absolutely has the capacity for insight. You see it in her videos. She constantly preaches about self-work. She talks openly about her triggers and rage. She recognizes that her rage has continually caused her to lose her relationships as well as be kicked out of living situations, making her homeless. It's not like she doesn't know what her issues are. It's not like she doesn't know what the solution is. She just, from my perspective, does not want to get her. I don't know why she won't seek help at this point, knowing the damage that her BPD has and continues to cause to her life. But she just chooses not to seek help and never understand that. And I'm guessing her family plays a role in this in some way. Because Anastasia does not talk to any of her family. And she's made that very clear.
But who am I? Who am I? I'm Anastasia Alexandria. I'm a lady. I got BPD. Both my parents are narcissists. My mother has untreated OCD, and my father has like about 6 different mental disorders, although he was probably misdiagnosed with a couple of them. But he was diagnosed with a lot of different mental disorders because like his entire life he was trying to figure out what was going on with his brain, and he never really figured it out. But he did take it out on me a lot and my siblings. And I'm 5 years younger than my older brother and my sister, who's 7 years older than me. And they were really close to each other because they were a lot closer in age than they were to me. And my father was in a much better mental place when they were young than he was when I was young. Plus, like, my parents were still married for the vast majority of like their early childhood, right? Because like they didn't break up until I was like 2, right? So like my sister was 7 and my brother was 5 by the time like my parents broke up, and my dad abused my mother until my mother left him, right? And then my dad abused the shit out of me. He didn't really ever like my brother and sister in the same way because like he just skipped over them, right? Like he just skipped over them, you know. And when he was mean to them, they left. They were like, "Oh, I'm not going to live with you anymore," and they left his house and they went to go stay with my mother, who was like neglectful. She was neglectful, but she wasn't like nearly as you know, she was mostly just neglectful actually, and controlling of her space, but she just didn't want kids around, right? She just didn't want to pretend like she wasn't a mom was like her big thing.
And she does not speak to her mother anymore. And this is actually the first major event in the timeline of the downfall of Anastasia. Somewhere between August and September of last year, Anastasia was still living in her mother's home. Now, according to Anastasia, her mother had not been home in 4 to 5 months, and when she finally came home, she found the place in complete disarray. There were dirty dishes and trash everywhere, there were holes punched in the walls, and she went to confront Anastasia in her bedroom and found her in bed naked with a sexual partner. Her mother started yelling at her, which caused Anastasia to wake up and react and start yelling at her back. This led to her mother calling the police and filing a restraining order against her, telling the police that Anastasia had threatened her life and she was worried for her safety. So Anastasia was kicked out of the home and moved into a trailer with her partner at the time until she could find a place to stay as well as deal with the restraining order, which she intended to fight, stating that Anastasia's mother had lied about her being threatened. Now, Anastasia will state that when she appeared in court, her mother actually admitted to not feeling threatened, and the restraining order would ultimately be dismissed. However, following that, she is no longer in contact nor living with her mother.
I live with her, or I did up until today, but today she kicked me out because the house was too messy for her, and she has OCD that she's been ignoring for years, so any amount of messy is too messy for her. Any history of people living there within recent memory is too messy for her, and I, live in the house. Not to mention, we were a little sad about our dog dying, so I got a little depressed and maybe didn't clean as much as I should have. So just to be clear, she was gone for like 4 or 5 months and came back entitled with a vengeance, like, this is my house and if you dare exist in it, I'm gonna be a bitch about it. So my mother broke into my room to yell at me at 10 in the morning before I had woken up, and I'm a 25-year-old, I'm active. There was a person in my bed at the time, and yet she still broke into my room to yell at me. So I was, needless to say, very, very upset, and I screamed at her to get out of my room, which is very reasonable under the circumstances, frankly. And I screamed at her until she got out of my room. She then immediately called the cops and said that I made her fear for her life, which is ridiculous, frankly. Unless you need to be in my room to live, I don't think I made you fear for your life. And frankly, if you break into my space, I don't feel bad about making you fear for your life. Do you know what happens when you corner an animal? Any animal. Yeah, I don't feel bad about protecting myself. Nor have I ever. Speaking of nor have I ever, I actually have diagnosed CPTSD because my father was abused. So people breaking into a space that I consider mine is not something that you can do without me going into a fury, which she knows because she's my mother and she's been around me for years. So either she's intentionally ignoring my PTSD triggers, or she's so stupid that she refuses to understand that going into the room of a active 25-year-old isn't okay. And neither of those things are cool. The thing that is the worst about this is that nobody believes me when I tell them that my mother is manipulative, right? They always doubt me. They always think that I'm the one being ridiculous. Like, they always believe me if I say my dad's a but if I say my mom, go, oh, you're just being ridiculous. And it took me so much longer to understand that she was being because so many people were just minimizing my thoughts because they perceived me as AMAB for a long time, being mad at my mom, and now just because they perceive me being mad at my mom, and moms can't do anything bad, they're moms, they're amazing heroes. Like, no, they're evil bastards a lot of the time. Just because she's a white woman doesn't mean she's a good person. Like, people seem to think that I need to be grateful for her for taking care of me, but the only reason she ever took care of me is if it gave her some sort of control over me, and if I denied her that control, she immediately stopped taking care of me. Like now. So no, I don't need to be grateful for her means of controlling me. No, I don't. Hey cutie, so the real problem with believing all victims is that sometimes people can genuinely be a victim of false accusation, like me, for real. My mother filed a restraining order against me. The judge asked her, "Are you afraid of her?" She said no. That is a false restraining order. It got canceled immediately, but I got kicked out of my house without any notice. That's not illegal. It should be. But you can totally file a false restraining order without any evidence. And it is on the responsibility of the person who is getting the restraining order filed against them to fight it. And if they choose not to fight it just because it's a lot of work to go to court and maybe they don't have the time, that restraining order is going to get permanent. I did choose to fight mine, and my mother didn't choose to perjure herself, but had she chosen to perjure herself, it would have been even more difficult for me to fight it. People can be victims of false accusation. I love you so much.
Now, in this trailer is where another large point in the timeline known as the Apollo dog incident or the stolen dog incident would take place. And FYI, Anastasia is not the most reliable narrator. And you'll come to see that as we move forward, and you'll come to especially see that in part 2 of this video. Thankfully, we do have a video statement from Anastasia's ex-partner, which I will show at the end of this section in order to get a better understanding of the situation. So, according to Anastasia, while she was living with this trailer with her partner, she encountered this dog. She claims the dog had been following her around, so she began to bond with it. Now, the dog was actually their neighbor's dog, but according to Anastasia, the dog seemed neglected and didn't like being at the neighbor's home. And since the dog had been following her around, she thought she could just take the dog for herself, her neighbor's dog.
Hey, Sweet Pea, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to do if a dog keeps choosing to come over here rather than be at its owner's, because this dog, this big guy right here, he really seems to love it here. Now, I can try and get him back to the neighbor's house where he comes from, but he certainly doesn't like going there. Seems a bit skinny, although he responds better to praise than food, which is, well, I don't know. Makes me like him, but is worrisome. If the owners come over here and try and take him back, well, he doesn't want to go with them. He seems to really dislike them, which I don't like. And I'm not trying to steal anyone's dog, nor am I trying to start problems with my neighbors. But I love this little guy, and I would not like to see him hurt, and he seems to like it. What do you think?
But apparently, at first, the landlord actually said it was alright for Anastasia to keep the dog, and that the dog was actually up for rehoming. And at that point, she had already named the dog Apollo and had gone to the store to purchase supplies for the dog. However, the landlord then told her she could not keep the dog as a pet. The reason Anastasia gives for this, though, are sort of inconsistent. In her first TikTok talking about the dog incident, she said the landlord told her that she could not keep the dog due to the dog owner threatening his life.
Hey, Sweet Pea, so I've had a bit of a rough day. Rough couple days, actually. Doesn't seem like I can get anything that I'd like. Well, I don't know. Maybe I made a deal with the devil at some point, because I'm successful in a lot of ways recently, and deeply unhappy. Like, I am so unsupported emotionally in my personal life right now. I was showing a dog earlier in a video that, like, my neighbor wasn't taking care of and kept coming over here. I was then talking to some people around here, and I found out that, like, that dog was up for rehoming. Like, they were looking to rehome that dog, and I got my hopes up about adopting that dog, because it would be really nice to have something there for me right now. I got kicked out of my house. I'm not doing good. I'm not doing good. I'm not doing good. But my landlord, not gonna let me have that dog specifically because the person who's trying to rehome that dog threatened his life, and, you know, he's gonna take the loudest one's side because that's the way it always works. And everyone who lives here is cool with having the dog here. Some of them even want the dog here, like Steve, this other guy who lives here, wanted the dog here, and the landlord told him no, too. The landlord doesn't even live here, you know?
Then, in a later TikTok, she claims the landlord told her she could not keep the dog due to the trailer not having proper plumbing, as she stated her and her partner were defecating in a bucket.
And so after I got kicked out of that house, I moved into a tiny trailer with my partner. It had running water, but there wasn't any plumbing. We pooped in a bucket, which I only tell you because their landlord wouldn't let me have a dog, or at least that's the excuse they gave me for rehoming the dog after they said I could have them.
But she then claims that the landlord said they could not keep the dog due to a dealer that was living next door to them, and they thought that having the dog would cause problems.
This dog who kept coming around, they were a stray, right? And they told me that, oh, the landlord just wouldn't let them have it because we're afraid of the neighbor who's a dealer and they're gonna really hurt us, right?
So when Anastasia returned home, she found that the dog was no longer there, and when she asked, the landlord had said that the dog had been rehomed. So first, she can't keep the dog due to the dog owner threatening his life, Then she can't keep the dog due to not having proper plumbing. Then she can't keep the dog due to a drug dealer that lives next door. Do you guys kind of see what I mean when I say that Anastasia is an unreliable narrator? She's told this story in a lot of different videos and live streams, and it's never really consistent. In fact, the only consistent part of the story she tells is her reaction to not being able to keep the dog. Because according to Anastasia, she became so enraged when she discovered that she could not keep the dog that she had another BPD episode. And as a result, Anastasia was kicked out of the home and then was left homeless.
I've never really gotten closure with any of the important dogs in my life, and recently there was this dog that kept coming over to the property I was staying at and saying hi and loving on me, and it was this beautiful, sweet dog with snowy white eyes and, like gray on brown fur. It was gorgeous, and it just wanted love, and I love that dog, and I have been having a hard time feeling any sort of emotional attachment to dogs for many years because I just get hurt when I do get attached to dogs, and this was like the first dog where I was like, maybe I will get attached to it. And I was trying not to get attached to it because it wasn't my dog, it was the neighbor's dog. But the neighbor seemed to be neglecting it. Then I was led to believe that, I might be able to adopt the dog because apparently the neighbor was giving it away. And I got really excited. I named the dog. I was already, really happy to have the dog around, but now I was unashamed of being really happy, so I let myself feel that and got my hopes up. And then they lied to me again and told me that, the owner was threatened by the guy who was giving the dog away and didn't want to have that dog here because it would just cause too many problems. But actually what was happening was the landlord who said that I was not allowed to have the dog was stealing the dog. The dog was never being given away, and he didn't want me to have it because that would cause complications. So I didn't get the dog, and he didn't tell me that, right? Because if he had told me that, I might have been able to work around that in some way, if I was going to get kicked off this property, I might as well take the dog with me, but no, instead they took it somewhere else, and they're like, we can't even give you their number or anything because the dog's better there. It's like, well, the dog knows me, the dog loved me, the dog kept following me around and wanted to be with me, and I said that, well, if that's true, then why don't I just take your dog? I mean, you can just get a shelter dog. I don't know why you're attached to your dog, trying to point out to them how ridiculous it is. I want my dog. I want the dog that found me. I want the dog that fell in love with me. I want my dog. I don't want a dog. And if you can't get that, I don't know what your problem is. Have you never felt love?
And here's what Anastasia's ex-partner has to say regarding the situation.
Okay, here's what happened with the dog situation. For several times in the past couple months, a dog has been coming over to the property. This dog has been staying at our other landmate's house occasionally when he can't bring him back over. Occasionally when he did come over and I was outside, I would take him back. Anya, with very little interaction with this dog, would be like, he's really pretty, he doesn't look like he's well loved, can we keep him? And I'd bring him back, and at one point I was like, the next time he comes over, when they come to get him, we can ask. He came over, we were hanging out with him. I asked our other landmate came over. She told me that he needs more love, and she wants to rehome him for them. I said, Anya wants him. Or Anya was thinking about taking him in. She said, cool, if he's going to be here, he's probably going to need to be tied up because she didn't know Anya was living with me at that time. I said, okay. I went over to Anya. I said, hey, I think they want to rehome the dog. She said, okay. We left and we went dog food. We didn't communicate to Geo that we were for sure going to take the dog that day. We got back. I went to my landlord. I said, hey, Anya's living here now. I wanted to let you know. He said, okay, cool. I heard you had an interaction with the dog. And I said, yeah. He said, I'm bringing the dog to a shelter. And I said, okay, Anya wanted to take him in. He said, not allowed. The neighbor is crazy. And I don't want the dog here because I don't want to cause issues. I said, okay, that makes sense. The guy seems like a dick. So I went over to Anya. I said, hey, can't have the dog here. You're allowed to live here. They're not going to raise our rent, but they can't have the dog here. She got upset. I said, it is what it is. We can't change it. That's it. The dog was rehomed. Yeah, I didn't know how the dog was being rehomed. I woke up at 4 a.m. to her screaming at me, telling me I needed to fix the problem, that we needed to be homeless for this dog after And like, how were we going to be homeless? I've been homeless. I didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to lose my safety and security. And like, we were living in a trailer that has no windows. Like, we can't leave the trailer in the woods. What are we going to do? So I told her, no, I don't want to do that. You need to leave because you're screaming at me. And that's what happened. And the dog got rehomed to a really nice family. If anyone has claim over the dog, it's the other person at our property that actually spent more time with the dog. That dog was more often at his door than ours. It's not her dog. Thanks.
So now Anastasia is homeless, and at this point it's like middle of November, so it's winter and she's homeless.
Sweet pea, look, it's snowing. I have been driving all night. I've driven 1,000 miles and I still have 200 more miles to go, but I am sick and tired of feeling like I'm not making any progress and feeling like I constantly have a ticking clock, so I can't really like ever rest. I am just gonna like work as hard as possible so I can get shit that I need done, and I can actually take a breather for a second, because I really, really need that. I really need that. I haven't rested in just so long. I love you.
She stays in a hotel for a few days until she can no longer afford it and then is living out of her car. She then later drives back down to Oregon to pick up some of the stuff she left. She had been debating whether or not to purchase a van to fix up to live in or to purchase an apartment. And at this point, it seems she is more sold on the apartment idea due to the fact that she doesn't have a credit score, which I'm pretty sure you often need credit scores to get an apartment, but maybe not for everywhere.
Hey, Sweet Pea. So I'm driving back down south to pick up some of my stuff. I've decided I'm going to do an apartment instead of a van life because I don't have any credit score, like none at all. My parents went through bankruptcy when I was pretty young and kind of just taught me that loans were bad, period, which means I've never borrowed money. I don't really trust bureaucracies in general, in fact, and because of that, it's very difficult for me to borrow money to buy a van, and I don't have the skill set to convert or work on a van that's cheaper. So we're going to do an apartment while I figure out how to do van life, because I think I would still like to travel. I'm thinking the Ashland area. Ashland, Oregon is where I'm going to look for an apartment. I still need to figure out credit scores, though, so we're going to go to my bank and get a credit card, stop by the place I used to live, get some things and reorganize some things, go to a storage unit, drop off some things, and then look at apartments. Also, I know I said personal updates were going to go on my Patreon from now on, but until I'm in a more stable living situation, I'm going to continue to update everyone about my housing situation here. Because like so many people are concerned about me, and I think that's lovely and sweet, and I'd really like to encourage that behavior. So
look, in my opinion, credit scores are an absolute abomination to society. They make everything in life far more difficult, and whoever thought they were a good idea, I do not like you. So around this time following the dog incident, Anastasia begins to make more content focusing on her anger. And what I mean by that is she starts making content talking about anger as an emotion and anger being just as valid of an emotion as sadness and other emotions, which by itself isn't necessarily a problematic statement. However, it's the surrounding statements she makes regarding this that are concerning. Because according to Anastasia, anger and screaming at someone is not a behavior unless you are being physically violent.
hey, Sweet Pea. So all emotions are actually equally valid, and that includes anger, actually. It's not like the one exception to the all emotions are valid rule. It's not any more or less than any of the other emotions, like sadness. You can manipulate someone by crying at them or just being really, really sad and self-destructive around them, just like you can by screaming at them. And why would one of these things be more inherently than the other one? I mean, like, as long as you're not actually resorting to physical violence, there's no reason that screaming at someone is worse than crying at them. They're both just ways of inducing an emotional reaction in that person.
This is absolutely not true. You do not have to be physically in order to be. And yes, screaming at someone, especially doing it regularly, is a behavior. Is anger a valid emotion? Yes. However, your reaction as a result of your anger isn't always valid, and screaming at someone is not valid. And she also claims that if she is angry, you are also responsible for her anger, even if she knows she is in the wrong.
Right? And if you're using that to coerce them, maybe it's the coercion that's the problem. Like, ignoring your emotions doesn't actually make them go away anyways. So if you feel angry, you need to express that anger in some way, or you're just gonna have it come out in ways that you're not prepared for and aren't even aware of, maybe. And that's way worse for everyone involved, I promise. Like, you can't just shove anger down and pretend it doesn't exist. And when someone is angry, you can't just pretend like you don't have a part to play in that. Like, yeah, you might not want to change anything. They might be the one who is in the wrong in that situation, but you are definitely responsible in the same way that you have a part to play when someone is crying because of you. Like, yeah, they might be unreasonable and they might be manipulating you, but you still are responsible on some level for them crying. And if you care about that relationship, you need to address that responsibility, right? You ignoring someone being mad at you or ignoring someone being sad at you is you choosing to give up on that relationship. Like, that is what you were doing. That is what you were doing. You need to either address those emotions or give up on the relationship. There's not really another choice. And there's no reason to say that anger's more or less okay than sadness, right? Does that make sense? I really hope that does make sense.
This logic makes absolutely no sense. And this is something that Anastasia reiterates a lot, especially in regards to the individuals that came forward publicly with allegations against her. Once again, this is something we're going to break down a little deeper in part 2 of this video. But her opinions on anger and her expression of her anger is very important and give context to a lot of the situations we see with her and how those situations play out. So now at this point, Anastasia has decided to not go along with the idea of getting an apartment, saying the application fees are too high and that landlords are a scam.
Hey, little mama. So I've been looking for an apartment, and application fees are just fully 100% a scam. Like, you're really gonna charge me money before I even get to see the apartment you say you might rent out to me? I don't fully know that you own it, or that it even exists. Maybe it's just a building somewhere you've decided you were capable of convincing me you might rent out to me. Or maybe you've decided on the kind of people you're willing to rent it out to, and I don't fall into that category. But of course, you're willing to take my money and then forget about my application. Like, why wouldn't you take my money? And it's non-refundable. It's not like I have any recourse, you know? Plus, some of it's supposed to go towards a background check, but I don't know that happened. You know, maybe you just pocketed it. And even if it did go to a background check, I'm not entirely convinced that the idea of doing a background check to deny someone housing is a good idea. Like, if someone can do something that is so bad it denies them access to basic necessities, why are we just shoving those people into the world to just, like, be denied basic necessities until they end up, you know, like, why won't we just, like, lock those people up into some little tiny room where we can study them or at least watch them, you know? Like Charlie Manson or someone like that falls into that category, not just the general person walking around looking for an apartment. People deserve necessities, you know? You can't just deny them based upon something that they've done in their past. And more importantly, you can't just charge people money because you say you might be willing to give them a place to live.
And actually, on the 19th of November, she ends up back in the same place she was before, the trailer. And we find this out because she posts a TikTok in the trailer, once again bringing up the dog incident. And she's very angry when she's talking about this, and while I can understand why this is upsetting for her, the whole reason she got kicked out of the trailer to begin with was because of her overreaction to not being able to keep the dog that wasn't hers to begin with and she only knew for a few days. So perhaps it's not in her best interest to get angry and reactionary in the home talking about the dog, which is the reason you were removed from the home, because of your reaction to not being able to keep the dog, which is a pattern we see with Anastasia time and time again.
Hey, sweet pea. So I'm back at the place I used to live, and someone here is trying to gaslight me into thinking that the problem with why I lost the dog was that I didn't make it clear enough that I wanted Apollo in my life. But I got kicked out of my home because I made such a big fuss about wanting my goddamn dog back, because they stole my dog from me, because they promised me I could have a dog, because this dog kept following me around and asking for love. And you know what, honestly, I don't know why. Maybe it's some sort of intimidating energy I have, which I can understand, but I have to initiate all the relationships in my life. You know, that's fine, that's fucking fine, but this dog for once actually wanted me. It was lovely to feel wanted for once. It was amazing. They stole that from me. I went to the store after they said that this dog was gonna be rehomed and got my hopes up, freaking picked out a name to get for the dog, supplies, you know? Came back, dog was nowhere to be seen, they wouldn't let me have the dog back.
You know, spent all night fighting with my partner because they wouldn't let me be mad at the landlord. Even they wouldn't even let me be mad about not being allowed to have my dog, right? So like I spent all night fucking working with that, and eventually I stopped fighting with that and went to sleep, and I woke up and I was really mad about not having my goddamn dog. You know? And that's why I got freaked out, because I screamed like this about wanting my dog back. You know what? And I'm not sorry. I want my goddamn dog!
She actually has a whole TikTok playlist just talking about the dog incident named Apollo. And in one TikTok, she actually states that she even considered doxing the person who took the dog.
It was my dog! Okay? Just because you can't handle the idea that you stole someone's dog because you're a dog person, and that's a terrible thing to do, doesn't mean you didn't steal my dog. You stole my dog. You stole my dog. And yeah, I know that would make you feel like a terrible person. You are a terrible person. But the problem is I don't really know what to do from here. I consider doxing the person who stole my dog, you know, name and address and everything, but I really just think that would lead to violence and not a solution. Like, I don't think they could get my dog back, and I don't want people to just get hurt for no reason. I considered it if it would get my dog back, but it wouldn't, because the person who stole my dog doesn't have the dog anymore, and I don't know where the people who have the dog are, but frankly, they didn't steal my dog. They just got a lovely, sweet dog in their lives, and now Apollo's been there for a couple days, like a while, more than a couple days, like a couple weeks, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, but still, he's not Apollo anymore, you know? He's whoever they named him. And like, yeah, I only had him for a couple days, for a few weeks, but like he was coming around for a while. And you know what? If you had a baby for 3 days and it was kidnapped, it wouldn't make it less bad. That'd be terrible. Apollo was my dog, okay? He wanted me, and I wanted him.
And actually, throughout the end of November as well as December, she becomes homeless again, as we see her making TikToks in what appears to be a hotel setting. Then on December 18th, this is when Anastasia makes a TikTok talking about her being homeless and living in her car, and this is when she reveals that she has started a GoFundMe. The GoFundMe is for her to purchase a van to fix up and live in, and she is asking for $30,000.
Hey, Sweet Pea. So I'm homeless right now. I'm living out of a Jetta, which is like a tiny car, so it's not exactly super comfortable because I have to figure out where I'm going to sleep every night, which is very stressful and doesn't leave me a lot of free time to do anything else, like make content. So if you'd like to help me make content, I'm trying to afford a van, and you could go over to a GoFundMe I've started and give me a couple dollars so that I could afford a van more easily. I've set the GoFundMe at $15,000, which is a lot of money, but there's a lot of people following me now, so maybe that's not too big of a dream, and I want to apologize for dreaming big. Regardless of if you can't give or don't want to give, I love you still, okay? I'm happy you're here. Have a great one.
Now, between December 18th and February 3rd, we don't really have any TikToks posted from Anastasia. And she is posting mainly old TikToks to her Instagram page, so we have to rely on some outside sources for this part in the timeline. So, following the GoFundMe, Anastasia actually receives a $10,000 donation on Christmas Eve, which is truly a Christmas miracle if I've ever heard of one. Now, sometime between Christmas Eve and February 2nd, Anastasia is able to raise enough money for a van. And on February 3rd is when she posts the van saying it is not done being built.
Hey, Sweet Pea. So I got my van. Look, it's so big. There's so much room in here for activities, although it's unconverted, like entirely. So I have a bunch of work that I need to get done before I can really live in here comfortably. But it is a place that has a roof over it that I can take with me, which is all I really, really need. I do have to figure out what I'm going to do with my Jetta today, but it's a piece of crap. So they offered me $1 at the dealership. Was just very insulting, actually. Everything they did at that dealership was very insulting. I got the feeling they didn't like me, probably because my whole gender thing, you know what I mean? But that's okay, I'm done with them now. What do I do with a car that I need to get rid of today? If all else fails, I'm just going to try and pawn it, but like, you know, I don't know, what do I do with it? Can I donate it somewhere? Is that an option? I don't know. What do I do? It's not a good car. It's a piece of crap, but it's a car and it runs.
On February 7th, she posts a TikTok talking about why exactly alcohol is addictive. and states she recognizes that she is unable to drink alcohol in moderation like most people.
Hey, sweet pea. So alcohol is a positive allosteric modulator as well as an agonist of the GABA A receptor, meaning it bonds to the GABA A receptor and makes GABA activate it more strongly, as well as activating it on its own without any GABA present, right? And GABA is this neurotransmitter that regulates the strength of the electrical signals passing through the neurons in your brain. It makes the electrical signals less strong. And if your body gets used to an excess of alcohol or an excess of GABA, it can decrease the sensitivity of those GABA receptors and also increase the sensitivity and presence of NMDA receptors, which kind of do the opposite of GABA. They excite your neurons. And then when you quit alcohol, those excitatory receptors can pump an excess of calcium ions into your neurons and even cause cell death if it's severe enough, but definitely cause a bunch of severe side effects that we call withdrawal, which is why binge drinking is very, very bad, because you repeatedly go through those withdrawal side effects, right? And you don't want to do that. You don't want to change your neurochemistry in such a way that you're more prone to anxiety just because you want to have fun sometimes. And if you can't handle moderation, I would highly recommend that you just quit it entirely. I know I can't handle moderation because if I have a little bit, I need to have a lot more than that. And some people are like that. It's a genetic thing even. It's called alcoholism. And I love you, even if you haven't.
It seems she is beginning to recognize that she has a drinking problem and is making steps to change it. And between that and acquiring the van, it seems things are looking up for Anastasia. Now at this point, we are seeing far less posts from Anastasia. This is because she begins doing live streams far more often for a couple of reasons. Number one, she is able to make more money from live stream donations. However, the second reason, and probably the main reason, is due to the public allegations made against her. She states in one of her live streams that she is going to be live streaming every moment of her life so that people can no longer make false allegations against her. And these live streams are just absolutely insane crash outs coupled with extreme brain rot. Half of the time she is crashing out stating that she is being falsely accused and trying to defend herself. And the other half of the time she is literally saying just the most problematic shit ever.
Lawyer? Are you a lawyer? Would sue. Let's sue. Are you sue? Let's sue. Do this shit. If you love me, you will go over there and you will correct everything they're saying and you will be nice.
Like, do you think I'm afraid of the cops? First of all, I'm not afraid of the cops, even if I did do something, and also I didn't do anything. Elaborate on the trans Malcolm X. You're genuinely confused.
Oh, because I said that because people keep being like, oh, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't like the way you're saying it. And like, I think that is kind of like a thing that happened a lot to Malcolm X, where people were like, oh, I mean, like, you know, I like what Malcolm X says, but like, couldn't he be like a little bit more civil about it? And it's like, that's what I mean when I say like the trans Malcolm X. I mean, like, fine, people will shut me down for being hostile, but like what I am saying is true. What I'm saying matters. Like, and like, yeah, there's a lot more to Malcolm X, but that's the part I'm specifically talking about. The idea that like, you know, people will shut me down for being hostile, but what I'm saying is true.
Once again, we are going to dive deeper into the allegations in part 2 of this video, as well as all of these crash out live streams, her reaction to the allegations. So please stay tuned for part 2. It's going to be a lot. As of recently, Anastasia is living out of her van. She posted a TikTok a few days ago showcasing the van, and as you can see, it is all fixed up. Now I will say, in one of her live streams, people noticed that when she was building for this van, she was not using any protective equipment, including eyeglasses, and since she was dealing with materials such as fiberglass, people became extremely concerned. And her reaction to this was, I'm a dummy mommy and I don't like being told what to do. And then tells her followers if they beg her and ask her nicely, she will wear protective gear. I don't know. I do not know. And a lot of her recent content also deals with her literally tattooing and piercing herself on camera.
I'll be putting a surface bar in my cheek, right about there.
Hey, Sweet Pea, so I don't know who needs to hear this, but you can actually just decide what looks good. Nobody has to agree with you. You don't have to ask anyone's permission. You can just do whatever you want to your body. I mean, it's your body.
And as you can imagine, this has drawn a lot more backlash her way. Additionally, she is now in a relationship. She states she is in a polyamorous relationship with a woman who she calls a sugar mommy. In one video, she shows all of these stuffed animals that this sugar mommy had purchased for her.
Hey, Sweet Pea, so this is my van as it stands right now. Look, I have a floating desk and I have a permanent microphone stand. I got a griddle. Yeah, things are going really well. I have a pupper right here. I've been playing Red Dead, if you can see that. Ooh, I got a little fluffy thing. Everything's going wonderfully. I have a home too as well, like an actual house, like a physical house with property. I've been planting trees and starting a garden because I have a partner. Like, I'm in a polyamorous relationship with a woman who I love very much, and she owns a house, so I live there. Yeah, I have a lease there even because I needed a proof of address in order to get a new ID. So I have a lease at my partner's house. You know, it's like a month-to-month lease, so whatever. But it's really, really nice to have a sense of security and, you know, like people who love me and dogs that love me because I got my pupper. I hope you're having a wonderful life and a wonderful day and a wonderful everything because you deserve it. A beautiful thing.
And with that, that is where we currently stand in the Anastasia Lexity saga. Congratulations to those of you who made it this far. I know this one was particularly heavy and intense. And like I said previously, there's still a whole other arc to this story that we did not touch on much in this video that we will be exploring in part 2. Please stay tuned for that, but also please be prepared. We are going to be touching on subjects such as SA and coercion, and we are also going to be diving deeper into Anastasia's opinions of as well as opinions of victims of abuse. That is going to be a very heavy video, so please just keep that in mind. But yeah, that is all I got for you for now. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I know this is definitely a very unusual situation. I mean, we've covered many different like TikTok lol cows, TikTok problematic TikTokers on this channel, and this one, I have to say, definitely this one stands out. This is kind of a standalone one. But yeah, that is all I have to say. Please let me know what your opinions are in the comments, and please be respectful to one another. I hope you all have a lovely day or night depending on where you are, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.